The U.S. Civil War is one of the most studied conflicts in American history, but not all of its stories make it into the history books. Beyond the famous battles and legendary generals, countless strange, shocking, and little-known events unfolded, some of which shaped the war's outcome in unexpected ways. From bizarre battlefield encounters to daring escapes and forgotten heroes, these moments offer a fresh perspective on a war that changed the nation forever. Want to uncover more fascinating history from the American Old West and beyond? Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more incredible stories from the past. First Emancipation Proclamation, August 1861. Before President Abraham Lincoln formally announced the Emancipation Proclamation in January 1863, an earlier attempt to free enslaved people took place under Union General John Charles Fremont. Known as the Pathfinder for his role in Western exploration, Fremont had been appointed by Lincoln to oversee the Department of the West. In August 1861, at the height of growing unrest in Missouri, he took a bold step by issuing his own emancipation order. Missouri was in a precarious state at the time, plagued by guerrilla warfare, internal conflicts, and the looming threat of a Confederate invasion. To regain control, Fremont placed the state under martial law. As part of this directive, he declared that any individuals actively supporting the Confederacy would have their property confiscated. This included enslaved people, whom his proclamation declared to be free. Furthermore, he proposed issuing official manumission documents to the newly liberated individuals, giving them legal recognition of their freedom. Fremont's decision was met with strong opposition from President Lincoln. While Lincoln personally opposed slavery, he was cautious about taking actions that might alienate key border states such as Missouri. At this early stage in the war, the president was focused on keeping those states loyal to the Union rather than pushing a broad emancipation policy. Concerned that Fremont's unilateral action could have unintended political consequences, Lincoln instructed him to revise the order, limiting its reach. When Fremont resisted, the president relieved him of his command in November 1861. This was not the last time a Union general would attempt to take emancipation into his own hands. In May 1862, General David Hunter, overseeing the coastal regions of Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida, issued a similar proclamation freeing enslaved individuals in those states. However, this action was also considered premature and unauthorized. Lincoln, aiming to maintain control over how and when emancipation would be implemented, quickly rescinded Hunter's order. These early attempts at emancipation highlight the complexity of the Civil War's political landscape. While some military leaders viewed immediate emancipation as a strategic necessity, Lincoln had to balance military strategy with political realities. His measured approach eventually led to the nationwide Emancipation Proclamation, issued in January 1863, which provided a legal foundation for the abolition of slavery while maintaining the fragile alliance of Union states. Man Without a Country, June 1863. Have you ever read Edward Everett Hale's classic story, The Man Without a Country? While fictional, it was inspired by real events surrounding Clement Laird Vallandigham, a prominent Ohio politician and attorney. Vallandigham was a vocal advocate for states' rights and a staunch critic of the Union's handling of the Civil War. He firmly believed that the Southern states could not be compelled to rejoin the Union by force, a stance that placed him at odds with the federal government. During the war, tensions ran high over issues of loyalty and dissent. In 1863, Union Major General Ambrose Burnside issued General Order No. 38 in Ohio, which made it a punishable offense to publicly express sympathy for the Confederacy. Vallandigham, never one to hold back his opinions, delivered a speech condemning President Abraham Lincoln's policies. His remarks led to his arrest under the new order. What made his case particularly controversial was that, as a civilian, he was tried before a military tribunal rather than a civilian court, raising legal and constitutional concerns about the limits of wartime authority. The military court found Vallandigham guilty, sentencing him to 2 years of confinement. However, rather than imprisoning him and risking further political turmoil, Lincoln chose a different course of action. In a move that sidestepped deeper controversy, the president commuted Vallandigham's sentence and ordered his banishment to the Confederacy. Ironically, Confederate officials were not eager to accept him either, as his loyalties remained with the Union, even though he opposed the federal government's approach to the war. Eventually, Vallandigham made his way back to Ohio, where he continued his political activities. His case became a defining example of the complex struggle between civil liberties and national security during the Civil War. Plot to burn New York City, November 1864. By March 1864, the Confederacy faced mounting challenges and recognized that victory was becoming increasingly unlikely. In response, Southern leaders sought unconventional strategies to disrupt the Union war effort. One such plan involved targeting New York City with a coordinated series of fires designed to create chaos and weaken Northern morale. A group known as the Fire Brigade was tasked with carrying out the operation. The plan involved setting fires in multiple hotels across the city, serving both as a diversion and as a signal for other groups to take action. Once disorder spread, additional operatives were expected to seize key municipal buildings, overpower local law enforcement, and free prisoners held at Fort Lafayette. If successful, the operation could have significantly destabilized the Union's home front. To execute the plan, the group intended to use an incendiary chemical mixture called Greek fire, supplied by a chemist sympathetic to the Southern cause. This substance, inspired by ancient formulas, was believed to be highly flammable and difficult to extinguish. However, when the plot was set in motion on November 25, 1864, many of the conspirators struggled to properly ignite the chemical. As a result, only a few fires broke out, and the plan largely failed to unfold as intended. One unintended consequence of the operation was the burning of Barnum's American Museum, a well-known attraction in the city. Fortunately, no lives were lost in the incident. Despite the failure of the larger scheme, authorities quickly uncovered the details of the conspiracy. The mastermind behind the plan was eventually captured, brought to trial, and sentenced in 1865. This event highlights the desperation of the Confederacy in the final year of the war. As battlefield victories became less frequent, leaders explored alternative methods to weaken the Union. The attempt to disrupt New York City, while unsuccessful, serves as a reminder of how warfare during the Civil War extended beyond traditional battles, influencing civilian life in unexpected ways. Siamese twin gets drafted, 1865. Chong and Eng Bunker, the famous conjoined twins from Siam, modern-day Thailand, became well-known figures in 19th century America. After years of touring as entertainers, they retired in 1839 and settled near White Plains, North Carolina. Embracing their new lives, they purchased 700 acres of land, adopted the surname Bunker, married sisters, and raised large families. Like many landowners in the South at the time, they also enslaved people, a fact that adds complexity to their historical legacy. By 1865, as the Civil War neared its end, Union General George Stoneman conducted raids through North Carolina, seeking to draft local men into the Union Army. According to local accounts, the draft process involved placing the names of all eligible males over the age of 18 into a lottery. When the drawing took place, Eng Bunker's name was selected, but Chung's was not. This presented an unusual dilemma. The brothers physically joined at the chest, could not be separated, meaning Eng could not serve without Chang. Recognizing the impracticality of the situation, Stoneman ultimately dismissed Eng from service. Despite avoiding conscription, the war still had a personal impact on the Bunker family. Each brother had a son who joined the Confederate cause. Both young men survived the war, and the Bunker family continued to live in North Carolina long after the conflict ended. The story of Chang and Eng's near drafting highlights one of the many unexpected and unusual moments of the Civil War. It also underscores how the war touched every corner of society, even reaching the most extraordinary individuals. Thaddeus S. C. Lowe, Chief Aeronaut, June 1861. At the outset of the Civil War, the Union Army was hesitant to embrace the idea of using manned balloons for aerial reconnaissance. Military leaders did not initially recognize the strategic advantage of observing enemy movements from the sky. However, Thaddeus Lowe, America's most well-known aeronaut, set out to prove the value of ballooning in warfare. In 1861, Lowe conducted a dramatic demonstration for President Abraham Lincoln, showcasing a tethered ascent to illustrate how aerial surveillance could aid the Union cause. During this flight, he also transmitted the first-ever telegram from the air, further emphasizing the potential military applications of balloon technology. Impressed by what he saw, Lincoln approved the formation of the Union Army Balloon Corps. Starting in 1862, Lowe and his team of aeronauts played a critical role in gathering intelligence during major battles. From balloons like the Intrepid, they observed enemy positions and troop movements over battlefields in the Peninsula Campaign, Seven Pines, Fredericksburg, Antietam, and other key engagements. The ability to provide real-time information from the sky gave the Union a unique advantage in several operations. Meanwhile, Confederate forces attempted to develop their own balloon program but faced significant obstacles. Shortages of materials and resources combined with logistical challenges prevented them from successfully deploying a comparable reconnaissance effort. Despite the Balloon Corps' contributions, it struggled with internal challenges. Many military officers remained skeptical of its effectiveness, and Lowe encountered ongoing conflicts over funding and recognition. By 1863, frustrated by disputes over pay and the lack of support from commanders, he chose to resign as chief aeronaut. Without his leadership and advocacy, the Balloon Corps gradually faded from use, bringing an end to one of the war's most innovative intelligence-gathering efforts. Old Abe, 1861. For centuries, military units have adopted mascots, bringing a touch of camaraderie and morale to their ranks. Soldiers have bonded with a wide range of animals, from dogs and cats to more unconventional choices like goats, donkeys, monkeys, pigs, and even birds. However, few mascots have been as iconic as the one carried by the 8th Wisconsin Volunteer Infantry Regiment, a bald eagle, the very symbol of the United States. The eagle, initially taken as a young eaglet from its nest, eventually found its way to the regiment and was given the name Old Abe in honor of President Abraham Lincoln. She quickly became a celebrated emblem of Union patriotism, recognized for her striking presence and the unique role she played among the troops. Perched on a specially designed shield-shaped stand, Old Abe often roamed the camp, delighting soldiers with her antics, including snatching unattended food. More than just a camp mascot, Old Abe accompanied the regiment onto the battlefield, soaring above the chaos of war. She was present at 39 engagements, witnessing the action from above and becoming a living symbol of the Union's resilience. Confederate soldiers were reportedly ordered to capture her if the opportunity arose, recognizing her as more than just a bird. But despite these efforts, Old Abe made it through the war unharmed. Following the war, she was retired from military service and given a place of honor in the Wisconsin State Capitol in Madison. There, she continued to serve as a symbol of American unity and perseverance. Unfortunately, in 1881, Old Abe suffered severe smoke inhalation after a fire broke out in the building. Despite efforts to save her, she passed away shortly after. Over the years, some debate has emerged regarding details of her story. Questions have been raised about whether Old Abe was, in fact, female rather than male, and whether more than one eagle may have represented the regiment over time. However, what remains undisputed is that she was a real and well-documented figure, with numerous photographs and historical accounts confirming her place in history. Unsinkable Thomas Oliver Selfridge, Jr., 1862. Thomas O. Selfridge, Jr., a graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy, served with distinction in the Union Navy during the Civil War. Throughout his career, he repeatedly found himself in the midst of intense combat, but displayed remarkable composure and an extraordinary ability to emerge unharmed from life-threatening situations. His first major engagement came on March 8, 1862, when he served aboard the USS Cumberland during its battle against the Confederate ironclad CSS Virginia. As enemy shells and wooden splinters tore through the ship, causing heavy casualties, Selfridge moved methodically from gun to gun, continuing to fire at the approaching vessel. Despite the chaos and destruction, he remained composed until the Cumberland succumbed to its damage and sank. Remarkably, he managed to swim safely to shore. His ability to escape disaster was tested again when he took command of the USS Cairo. The vessel struck a Confederate naval mine, referred to at the time as a torpedo, and was lost. Once again, Selfridge swam away unharmed. His next command proved no luckier as his ship collided with another Union vessel and sank. Once more, he emerged from the ordeal without injury. In 1865, as the USS Heron took part in the naval bombardment of Fort Fisher, North Carolina, the vessel met the same fate as his previous commands. Yet again, Selfridge escaped unscathed. His astonishing streak of survival earned him a reputation as an officer who simply could not be sunk. Following the war, Selfridge continued his naval career, eventually rising to the rank of Rear Admiral. He retired in 1898 after decades of service. Having survived so many maritime disasters, he ultimately passed away peacefully on land in 1924 at the age of 88. His long and eventful life finally reaching its quiet conclusion. Leg that served the North and the South, June 1863. In 1863, Confederate Captain John Newton Ballard of Mosby's Rangers lost his leg during a battle. Like many of his fellow officers who faced similar fates, Ballard did not dwell on his injury. Instead, he promptly acquired a second-hand prosthetic limb and returned to his military duties. However, his troubles were far from over. While near Halltown, Virginia, his horse collided with that of a Union cavalry soldier, and the impact crushed his artificial leg. This unfortunate incident made him the only known soldier of the Civil War to lose the same leg twice. Despite this, fate was about to intervene in an unexpected way. In March 1864, Union Colonel Ulrich Dahlgren, who had also lost a leg in 1863, was killed during a cavalry raid near Richmond, Virginia. Dahlgren's severed leg was given a military funeral, and in an eerie twist of fate, the leg was sealed within the wall of Building 28 at the Washington Navy Yard. After his death, his body was found by Confederate soldiers, one of whom took his wooden prosthetic as a souvenir. This prosthetic leg eventually found its way to John Ballard, who wore it throughout the rest of the war, continuing his service. The leg that once belonged to a Union officer became an unlikely symbol of resilience, enabling Ballard to press on despite the many challenges he had faced. Cruel and unusual punishment. November 1863. In the mid-19th century, becoming a doctor was a relatively unregulated process. Aspiring physicians were required to attend medical school lectures, but there were no standardized qualifications or licensing requirements. As a result, during the Civil War, many physicians, regardless of their competence, character, or temperament, were called upon to serve, whether they were skilled, unfit, or in some cases, dangerously unqualified. One such example was Dr. Charles Briggs, who was assigned to the 54th Massachusetts Colored Infantry, famously depicted in the film Glory. On November 6, 1863, Briggs examined Private James Riley, a black soldier accused of engaging in inappropriate behavior with a mare. Although Dr. Briggs found no evidence to support the accusation, and Riley was cleared of the charges based on the doctor's testimony, the situation took a disturbing turn. For reasons that remain unclear, Dr. Briggs had Riley brought to his tent, where he subjected the soldier to an inhumane procedure. Despite Riley's innocence, the doctor ordered that the private be stripped, bound, and gagged. Without consent or anesthesia, Briggs performed a circumcision and then used a hot iron to cauterize the wound. This cruel and unnecessary act led to charges against Briggs for using circumcision as a form of punishment. However, despite the brutality of his actions, Briggs was never court-martialed. In a grim twist, just weeks after this event, Dr. Briggs was promoted to full surgeon of the unit, continuing his service throughout the remainder of the war. His promotion, despite the horrors he inflicted, highlights the chaotic and often unregulated nature of medical practices during the Civil War era, where unqualified and even sadistic individuals could still hold significant positions of power. Women of Roswell, July 1864. During the Civil War, Roswell, Georgia, became the site of a little-known mass displacement, a tragic chapter in the conflict between the North and South. In the midst of General William T. Sherman's march toward Atlanta, Union Brigadier General Kenner Garrard arrived in Roswell, a small town known for its cotton and woolen mills. These mills employed over 400 women, both black and white, who were responsible for producing cloth, Roswell gray, that was used for Confederate uniforms. The owner of the cotton mill, realizing Garrard's approach, attempted to protect his property by raising a French flag over the mill, hoping it would signal neutrality and prevent the destruction of his business. However, this attempt at subterfuge backfired. Garrard ordered the mills to be burned to the ground. Taking matters further, and following orders from Sherman, Garrard ordered the deportation of all the female workers, along with their children, around 700 people in total. They were taken under guard to a rail yard in nearby Marietta, roughly 10 miles away. There they were crammed into boxcars with nothing but the clothes they wore and 9 days' worth of rations, and were shipped to Indiana. Sherman also authorized a similar deportation of female textile workers from New Manchester, another town involved in fabric production for the Confederacy. The women and children were abandoned in a new city, left to fend for themselves with no support or resources. Most of the individuals involved in these forced deportations faded from history, their stories largely forgotten. A few, however, managed to find their way back home after the war's conclusion. This episode remains a stark reminder of the personal toll of the war, where innocent civilians, particularly women and children, found themselves caught in the harsh realities of a conflict that ravaged the nation. As we've seen, the Civil War was not just a series of famous battles and well-known figures. It was a complex and multifaceted conflict that affected countless lives in ways many of us don't often consider. These lesser-known events provide a glimpse into the broader scope of the war, highlighting the personal struggles, unexpected heroes, and hidden stories that shape the course of history. If you found these stories fascinating, make sure to stay tuned for more untold tales and surprising facts from the American Old West and beyond. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more incredible stories with you.